Good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. A lot to get to tonight. Oh, another ugly win for the Kansas City Chiefs. What do we make of the criticism Dustin Colquit levied, or maybe pointers that he levied at Tommy Townsend? Do you trust Harrison Butker to make a big kick? What is your takeaway from the Texans' big win over the Houston Texans? Where would this team be without Jerrick McKinnon? How concerned are you with the penalties that are being levied at the Chiefs' feet? Do you believe in the turnovers getting better at some point? Can they clean that up? Is Patrick Mahomes back in the lead for the MVP? Great effort. Jalen Hurts is hurt. Is he the top dog now? Defense only gave up 219 yards, allowed 24 points to a bad offense. What do we make of this defense at this point? How dangerous are the Seahawks, and who wins it? We break it all down right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
This is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric is the senior VP of Research and Development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
You heard it in the bottom box. If you're catching us live via the stream, remember you can catch us live Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. That's Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. He's just frozen with anticipation of what's going on here with the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't wait to hear him come out of his shell there. That's fantastic. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. You can catch my work at 810WHB.com. A lot to get to. Let's start first with explaining why Eric Eager is so frozen in time. And it's because, how about a dedication to commitment? Jeff, we're at our home base, sitting back, relaxing. Eric Eager is actually on the road, avoiding the weather that's coming in because he just couldn't possibly handle not being a part of the conversation when it comes to this epic victory the Chiefs had against the Texans. He's coming to us via the mobile. He is en route to family for the holiday weekends. He's literally in a car, and he's joining us anyway. We're not messing with the video because we don't know if he's got the bandwidth. But coming to us while traveling, that is a dedication that neither one of us have shown to this point.
No, I think that's actually Eric snapping a picture of himself looking at his DraftKings account after the Lions game on Sunday. They just wanted to keep that look on his face the rest of his life, or at least the rest of the season.
Yeah, he did call for the Lions outright, something we will get to in even more detail tomorrow on our 2 Deep NFL podcast. We stream that Wednesdays at 9 p.m., one of our sister podcasts. So if you want to be a part of that, feel free to join us tomorrow. But we will talk a lot of Chiefs football here in this, and we got a lot to get to. And Eric, listen, first of all, best wishes to you and your family, and thanks for making the commitment. I hope everybody in the car is doing well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Petro, we got 2 dogs back here. We have obviously my 2 daughters, my wife, Stephanie, who took over the controls here. I will say, having finally splurging on a car that has Wi-Fi finally has paid dividends, because not only do I obviously get to share this great evening with you guys, my favorite people in the world, but also I get to watch this privilege that is Liberty versus Toledo on my laptop here in the background. So, there's nothing more 2022 than what I'm doing right now.
Wow. So you're not only talking to us, but you're also bringing in a college football game. We've come a long way. Must be nice to be rolling the big Sumer Sports bucks and have that kind of technology at your fingertips, because not so much in my world. But we'll take it. We'll take it. Well done. By the way, I do love this. Anybody rob a bank last week? We all know what that's coming from. Apparently, one of the big Chiefs Kingdom guys who goes to the Chiefs show was pinched for robbing a bank in Oklahoma on his way to the game. I mean, I don't know. Is that dedication, insanity? Jeff, you want to take a shot at that one?
It's just a chiefaholic. Like I said, it's the Avengers universe. It's just like I didn't know there were so many characters. X Factor, Chiefaholic. I'm wondering who's coming out next. It's just like a stream of characters. But now, I heard the story this morning. I had not heard it until this morning.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
My favorite thing about the story is like Chiefs Kingdom, the Twitter sphere that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Yesterday was basically like, look, how does this guy get to roam free? Or sorry, how is this guy behind bars and Carl Cheifs gets to roam free? That was the biggest question mark of yesterday on Chiefs Kingdom.
Yes, I saw that one. I saw that one. I thought it was pretty good. Well done, well played. Let's dive right in. I thought we would go ahead and play it back because it's made a lot of the rounds. Dustin Colquit. You know, I've heard it called criticizing. I would call it critiquing. I think there's a difference between criticism and critiquing, and I think you can have constructive criticism. I think you can have fair criticism. Dustin Colquit talking about the hold this morning on the Border Patrol on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Full disclosure, it's the radio station that I work on. Jeff appears on that show. There was Stephen St. John. Does a great job as the host. Nate Bukaty was out, but Todd Lebo was in, and Mark Richter, former Chiefs wide receiver, were in, and they were interviewing Dustin Colquit, who Mark and I both tweeted during the game. There's a problem with Harrison Butker, and we know Dustin for a long time. Mark from playing with him. Mark does the pregame show on 810 with me. And so we talk all the time, and he knows from playing with him. I covered Dustin for a long time, gotten to know him since his playing career was over, chatted with him many times. Great resource, great when it comes to all things special teams, but football in general. This was the conversation today when Dustin Colquit began to discuss that basically thinks there's a problem with Tommy Townsend in how he's putting the hold down for Harrison Butker.
Sometimes the long snappers are not perfect. James has had a really, really great 3 years. But if he happens to over-rotate a ball or under-rotate a ball, you're going to have laces at 4 or 5. 6 o'clock would be straight towards Harrison. Like I said, 12 is out. A lot of holders have a hard time if a ball's laces are at 6 because it's a full turnaround. And so guys like Jeff Beagles, Sam Cook, Shane Leckler, when I watched those guys religiously on film, I saw them as soon as they caught the ball, they were already working those laces around, orientating them to where they needed to be for the kicker to have the best chance of hitting that kick. The laces are the most heaviest part on the ball, and so when you have winds left to right in Arrowhead or right to left, you want to aim those laces a little bit into that wind so it fights further before the energy of the ball slows down and you may miss a kick. So what I'm seeing, and I do have expertise because I was in that room, and I told him this, if you have a ball that, let's say, lands at 9 o'clock, you want to go ahead and go 9, 10, 11, 12 to the field goal because the kicker can't see that. If you're at 9, 8, 7, and you start spinning it in his direction, all that movement with the laces around the other way, one, it's longer if you look at the face of the clock. Then, and what he said to me when I was in a Zoom meeting and when I addressed it in the building when we came in for practice, is he goes, "Oh, you think so?" And I said, "No, I know so. A kicker doesn't want to see all that movement."
How about it? There's a lot of nuances that go into kicking a ball, Jeff. Listen, I actually, Dustin and I talked about this really before last year. This is something that's gone on. I don't know when the last time the Chiefs brought Dustin in to talk with folks. I know he was brought in as a, kind of like a coach on the field. He brought in, I think, on the practice squad going into the 2020 season, and they wanted him to work on the kicking. And he told me a similar story to it. I've alluded to it, not named him because, he didn't say off the record or anything like that. But I usually like to say, hey, I want to use this. I want to put your name. I hadn't done that. This is not a new story from him. This isn't something that he's just jumping on because he thinks, hey, I'm going to get after him because Harrison Butker missed a kick. What do you make of what he said? We've seen Butker be incredibly effective. We've also seen him missing, extra points in 2020. How much do you put into the hold? How much do any of us know about the hold beyond, a casual fan?
Full disclosure here, I never thought I would spend as much time talking about punting, holding, kicking as we're about to do for the next 10, 15 minutes. Look, I'm sure there is, he's got a point. I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. I just think the context of it, when you start to understand the relationships here and Butker's track record, I understand what Colquit's trying to say, what he's trying to do, and probably thinks he's helping. End of the day, Butker was 25 for 27 making field goals in the first year Townsend was holding for him, and he was 25 for 28 last year. I would like to know what he was doing right in those situations. I would like to understand why all of a sudden this is a problem. And it just sounds to me like, and I think someone mentioned it on this too, it's like, I don't think it's the whole reason behind this, him blowing up Townsend, but I do think, look, Butker's is his godfather to one of his kids. Townsend took his job a couple years ago. They obviously don't get along or don't like each other. And he just lobbed a grenade into the Chiefs locker room for the specialist to kind of figure out what to do with. And so, again, I think he probably has some points to be made here about what's going on technically. I have a hard time buying into the fact that this is all on Tommy Townsend, and 2, Butker gets a pass for every missed kick he has going forward. So, yeah, do I think there's a point? Yes. Do I think it wasn't handled well by Colquit? I think that too.
Interesting. Okay. What is his obligation as a former player for the Kansas City Chiefs that isn't on the payroll? I mean, do you Jeff, before I go to Eric, as like, a code of the road, once a chief, always a chief, keep everything in-house? I mean, like, I don't see what there was to gain from it. And if there was something that he saw, go to Dave Tobe, talk about it. I just think now it creates a weird dynamic there between the holder, between the kicker, between the coaching staff. And I think it lets Butker off the hook, and it lets the long snapper off the hook. He kind of, in that soundbite you just ran, he kind of made it sound as if Winchester's not getting good snaps to Townsend, and so Townsend needs to be better at handling a worse snap and getting it down. And again, I'm not up on what it takes to hold a football, to get it right, just right for kicker to kick the ball through. But I just don't think it's fair to say the guy who's ultimately kicking the football has no responsibility at all for his inconsistency. And that's just how I took it. All right, let's hear what Harrison Butker had to say. He, of course, got hit in the locker room today about these comments of Dustin Colquit. Here's his comments when asked in the locker room by associate of mine, Todd Lebo from Sports Radio 810.
One thing I've worked on past couple years is just looking right under the ball so that I'm not even really noticing the spinning laces, if there are any spinning laces, because I can't control that, right? And I'd like to think that no matter where the laces are, I should still be able to hit a straight ball. And that's one thing that Tommy and I have been working on throughout our time together, is just some drills where Tommy's putting the balls down, he's spinning it. So I have to get better at just kicking the ball, staring at the bottom, basically the ground below the ball. So I'm not even noticing a spinning ball, right? Because I can't control that. And I think a lot of times kickers, maybe give too much credit to balls where the laces are off or the lean or whatever it may be. I always just take the approach of I can do better. I can fix that. I should be able to hit any ball through the uprights.
I like this. I'll add that again, Harrison Butker today in the locker room. Jeremy says at the end of the day, it's Tobe's job to get all this fixed. Special teams has been anything but special this year. And I hear what Jeff's saying for sure, but is there a guilt by association here, Eric, and the fact that they don't feel punts well? They've been beaten on fakes, fake field goal, or fake punt, fake onside kick, all these things. Is it like, okay, Maybe we don't know who to point the finger at, but clearly this is just an extension of something that's been a manifestation of a terrible year. And then Dave Toe's been fantastic as a special teams coach, but this has been a terrible year across the board, Eric. What do you make of all this hubbub?
Yeah, I actually have an anecdote about this from my playing days. Like, I was a holder and I was a punt returner, and after one game where like we could not get the snap and hold down, I asked to get off of holding because during special teams portions I like didn't have enough time to practice. And I do think that and one of the things, it was interesting when I met John Harbaugh, one of the things I really wanted to talk to him about was this process, because if you remember the Bengals Ravens game on Sunday Night Football earlier in the year, Justin Tucker called himself a system kicker. He said, this is the Stout's first game winning hold. And, it is like when and I was somebody who did a lot of the data collection for PFF, in special teams, and you'd be amazed at, you can trace it back to, the snap timings, right? Like, so if the snap is off by, 5/100ths of a second, it really does throw things off. So I think Colquitt has a point in that regard, but I agree with Jeff. I think, if you actually care about whether or not the Chiefs are winning or not, like, I think this is something to talk about with Tobe, or something to talk about with Townsend himself, as opposed to, doing it to the media. It's not one of those things where he's a former player explaining what's happening and making us all smarter. It's a situation where he's trying to say, hey, this is a problem that the Chiefs have, and I know better. And I just think that that's a little rough of a look for him.
I'll stick up for Dustin Colquit. He went on to say, he said, listen, I'm bringing this up. Now, maybe he's been kept out of the locker room. Maybe he is sideways. I've had some people say that he's sideways with Tommy Townsend. He had nothing but complimentary things to say about Townsend, the punter. He did tell the story of where Townsend, it certainly came across that it was blowing him off when he was working with him about the hold. But, he really said Townsend's tremendously talented. He went out of his way. And at the end, he said, listen, he gave an example of where he screwed up a hold and it almost caught the team. He said, what I don't want to see happen is a hold not, get done and have it cost his team in the end. Right now, sour grapes, hey, I get why people would say that. He is friends with Harrison Butker. Let's turn around from that. I mean, is it a sign that this is a sounding board? This is Butker's frustrations being manifest through Dustin Colquit? Is it Butker going, good Lord, what is this? Now you're creating problems. We don't know. But I think at the end of the day, Jeff, like, number one, Dave Tobe, fix it. That's what you're paid for, right? It's all on him to get it fixed and get all the problems fixed. And number two, would you trust Harrison Butker to make a big kick right now if you needed him to?
No, I wouldn't trust him, no. But, I think that's been the case for a long time now. And again, I think it was Matt just said on here, it's the hold, it's the snap, it's the hold, it's the kick. There are three parts to this. And the frustration with what Colquitt says, and again, I have a ton of respect for him and his career and what he's done and what he's talking about, is that it would be great if he said what was going right when Buck was making all these kicks for the first 2 years. So I think it's not just, well, hey, I told the kid he was holding it wrong and all of a sudden it went south. It's like Butker was a pretty reliable kicker for 2 years. He hit a lot of big kicks. And so in this critique, I think you have to bring that up and say, well, he was doing this. Or I looked at the first 2 years when he was holding and he was doing this thing. And so it seems as if you're going to criticize the guy now, you need to explain there was some kind of transition, something started to go sideways in this process. And, oh, by the way, the kicker had a high ankle sprain in the first game of the season, and he hadn't been right since then. Like, that's got to be part of the conversation. And
Sure.
So, look, I agree with you. I do think, and maybe this is a larger issue with Andy and the staff and the way they approach players. They are super loyal to guys. They are totally behind them. We know Sky Moore has been a failed experiment. We know that I know you specifically did not like the idea of Isaiah Pacheco returning kicks when this season started. And maybe they're at a point here where they are so deep into their silos when it comes to special teams and how they want to deal with stuff that they can't see the forest for the trees. I'm totally here for that mindset. But yeah, do I think that Butker is untrustworthy right now? Yes. Do I think that Colquit should have handled it better and that there are bigger issues coming from that? I also think that as well.
Yeah. How about you, Eric? You good with sending him out there for the big kick?
Yeah, by the way, the holder on the extra point, the Boca Raton Bowl, just bobbled a snap. Now, there was rain, but it did cause a missed extra point. So we are prescient in our discussion here. I mean, I don't know. Butker's a kicker that I think is capable of making big kicks. He had the big kick against Buffalo last year. People think about Mahomes, but like Butker had to make a 50-yard kick for them to get to overtime. In that game, though, is emblematic of who Butker is. He missed an extra point and he missed the kick before halftime. We've had that this year with him, extra points and that kind of thing. But he's missed extra points for a long time, Soren. I mean, I remember going on your show in January of 2020, and you saying, is Butker going to cost us a game? And so, I think right now he's obviously working through a slump. I think what Jeff pointed out is the one worry I have relative to the other times he's gone through a slump, which is he was injured. And yet at the same time, I guess if you're a Chiefs fan or you're building the roster for the Chiefs, the question is what's the alternative? I mean, Matthew Wright, Matt Amendola, like we saw what backup kickers are worth or not worth in this league. So I think it just comes down to, Butker's probably a good enough kicker to overcome some of the tiny inaccuracies in Winchester snaps and the hold by Townsend when he's healthy. But when he's a little injured, some of those things, much like every other part of football, they come up and make you just a little bit worse than you normally are.
Yeah, I think this. Would I trust Butker? Yes. Am I convinced that all three components of it, as Matt said, are right? No, I'm not. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Dustin Colquit questioning what's going on. Like at the very least, like special teams has been a train wreck. And I don't know why we would give the benefit of the doubt to Dave Tobe right now when so many things have been wrong, right? Like I'm not qualified. I'll listen to Dustin Colquit. He's qualified. I hear somebody saying sour grapes. I really don't think that is the case. It's a couple of years removed. I've talked to Dustin Colquit. I really don't. I might be wrong. I'm not in his head. I'm not in his heart and soul. But my time around Dustin Colquit, I have not gotten the sense that there's any jealousy. He's had a fabulous career. Did very well for himself economically. Would he like to keep punting? Sure, he loves it. I mean, they all would, but I think he understands where his cycle was. But I don't think there's anything wrong that can come with questioning what's going on there. And so you check your process. If it's all good, great. Andy Reid just got away to us against the world mentality as guys. I don't see where there can be any big harm from that in the long run. Is there harm in the fact that you can't pummel the Texans, Jeff? How disappointed should Chiefs fans be that a one-win Texan team takes them to overtime, for God's sake?
Look, I don't know if there is – I guess I want to phrase it this way. After the Denver game, I thought, oh, you know what? This is it. I can't get to a place where I'm expecting the Chiefs to be dominant again just because of the way that game went. And it probably was just more of affirmation of that, of the Texans game. And I know that we sit here and say they got to, clean things up. The penalties were a big issue. That was a big storyline. I just think this is who this team is. And I made the comparison to the Minnesota Vikings earlier today on the Border Patrol on your radio station, where it's like we look at the Vikings and we say, man, like, are they really that good? They're 11-3, but their point differential is kind of crappy. The defense isn't that good. Yeah, they got some great players on offense, but man, they play a lot of close games. And the Chiefs do the same thing. And they've been doing the same thing for most of this year. And we give them a pass because Mahomes is great, and Kelsey is great. Chris Jones is an all-pro talent. But I think this is just who they are as a team. They are really good. When they're playing their A game, they're as good as anybody in the league. But they haven't played their A game in a long time. And so at some point you have to – I heard Sam McDowell talking to you earlier this week about, turnovers or I think I'm kind of putting words into his mouth, but he kind of basically said turnovers are really random and you need to look at the stats that are like, yards per play and these numbers mean more, they're more consistent. I understand what he's saying, but they keep turning the ball over. It's not random if it keeps happening every game. It's happened for 9 straight games. And so when you're going into a postseason with a really bad turnover differential, with a shaky defense and an unreliable kicking game, those aren't great things to have when you're playing really good teams. You can beat the Texans, you can beat the Broncos, barely, by the way, with those kinds of elements. But when you play the Josh Allens, when you play the Joe Burrows, they will beat you consistently with those kind of problems. So yeah, I do think that's what I took away from it, which was these problems aren't going to go away just because we think the Chiefs are just a great team.
Eric, my coworker, Curtis Siebold, does a great job digging down at things. He didn't have a chance to drill down really deep, but just the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback have a better record against losing teams than the New England Patriots did with Tom Brady at quarterback. So that means the old Dick Vermeil adage, keep losing teams losing. They're doing it a better clip than the Patriots did with Tom Brady. They've kept losing teams losing the last 2 weeks. It's just been really, really ugly. What level of concern do you have, and how much should Andy Reid and his staff be saying, we got a lot of work to do if we're going to beat winning teams?
Firstly, Petro, your joke about Curtis' website preference on the show was really good. I found that to be funny. And B, the only difference, so you do, like, the Chiefs win these games. However, since the Jets game in 2020, the Chiefs are 17-28 against the spread, meaning there's like an element there where they are winning, but they are not winning by as much as the market, believes they should win by, which again is, that's a little concerning from a betting standpoint, but ultimately they do win those games. I do think they should be concerned about the fact that they're sloppy. I'm kind of halfway between what Sam said on your show, Monday, and what Jeff is saying. Like, I do believe that if you outgain your opponent by almost 3 yards per play, you dominated them. Now, the fact that the game went into overtime is kind of fluky stuff. But to Jeff's point, the fluky stuff continues to happen. When you put young corners one-on-one with receivers, they're going to get called for penalties a lot. When when you have kind of a culture of, looseness with the ball. Now, Mahomes was almost perfect the other day. So it went from 3 interceptions by him to fumbles by Pacheco and fumbles by Smith-Schuster. And, I think there's an element there that worries me, but ultimately I still go by the adage, like, if you and the Chiefs are, I disagree with the Vikings characterization. The Chiefs are one of the best offensive teams in the league by expected points added, both on early downs and late downs. They're top half of the league in yards per play allowed. Like, the Vikings are like 31st in yards per play allowed. So I think it's a little different of a comparison there, because I do think the Chiefs are about as good as their record, but the last few weeks have not garnered a great deal of faith in me. But I'm willing to assume that after having played, the first 10 or 11 games of the year, 10 of them against teams that were winning record teams last year, that they're just kind of worn out right now, and they're kind of, in that lull. And if you look at historical football teams, including last year's Rams, all those teams that win the Super Bowl, like, they have a lull like this in the middle of the season. Like, the Bengals, in my opinion, are the best team in the AFC right now, but I sort of feel like they're peaking too early. I think the Chiefs aren't peaking at all right now, which is a little concerning, but also, given that the fact they could improve, to me, a little bit encouraging.
Yeah, that's the question. Is this the Jordan Bulls that didn't feel a need to go get the number 1 overall seed, the top record in basketball? They set the record for most wins one year, and then after that, it was like, let's just do what it takes to get to the playoffs. Is that what this Chiefs team is? Just playing out the string, knowing that they're going to be measured by the end? We'll find out when they get to the end at what level they play. By the way, you're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire Kansas City metro area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear, little and small, big and large. Yep, they handle it all in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project, every single one, comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Make sure you tell them you heard about them on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jeff, let's talk about where this team would be without Jerrick McKinnon. He's a guy that Eric Eager said was break glass in case of emergency or when you get to the playoffs. They felt like they've needed him. They've gone to him. He's responded. How big of an impact is Jerrick McKinnon? How important is Jerrick McKinnon for this team?
He's probably one of the three most important players on this team right now. I mean, he's got to be that. Obviously, you put Mahomes and Kelsey at the top two, but I would almost say he's more important to Chris Jones right now in terms of just what he means. And I think especially so with Kadarius Toney not really being a factor. As, you know, he's played a couple games, and McCole Hardman being out. I think you have to have that element of a player you can throw the ball to, and he can just make something happen for you. And it's, as much as we talk about the different weapons they've added and what Mahomes has done with that, they really haven't had that player outside of McKinnon in the last month or so. I mean, he's the guy that they can actually throw a screen pass to, or he's got a connection with Mahomes on broken plays that works out well. He's been a more stout runner this season than he was last year. I know he came on in the playoffs, but but he's really delivered in that realm for the majority of this season. Now, granted, he's got an injury history, so you wonder at what point does that become an issue. But yeah, I think when they picked him up, I thought it was because they had some concerns about the running back room, and I think that that's been proven right. That they didn't feel like Ronald Jones could do what he does. They didn't know what Pacheco could, at that stage of the game. I think they probably liked Pacheco as a project, but didn't see him doing what he's doing. And it was just Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who they knew had injury history. So, hats off to Brett Veach and Andy for going out and picking the guy back up and making him a part of the team, because I think if they don't have him, they probably have a couple more losses if they don't have him on the roster.
Yeah, and I love this from G. Fred. He says, extend McKinnon, please. It's basically on near a league minimum contract, Eric. I mean, this is a guy that's played great football, but the running back position, it's funny. He's the best running back maybe all around, right? Maybe Pacheco's the better runner, but he's significantly the better pass blocker, better pass catcher. They get him for near a league minimum. It speaks to why you don't go drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in round 32. But what do you think? Where does McKinnon stack up as to his importance coming down the stretch?
Yeah, I think, and this goes back all the way, to my PFF days. I at one point in time, like, my numbers like James White as adding as much value as any running back in the league to that Patriots team that won the Super Bowl in 2018. Like, I think this is a similar situation. Like, in 2018, the Patriots didn't have the best wide receiver core. Gronk was injured some of the year, and James White really added it. And I think when you look at past Patriots teams, it was Shane Vereen, it was Kevin Falk, it was guys like that who were just adding a ton of value to what that they were trying to do. And that's who McKinnon is. And Petro and Chadiha, last year, that was what I was wanting in this team. Like, this is like the first time since maybe Damian Williams, and I don't even think Damian Williams has played to this level. This is the first time in a long time that Mahomes has just had somebody where it's 1, 2, 3, nothing's there. I just feel comfortable swinging it out to a guy and seeing what he can do. And you got to imagine for Mahomes, that first touchdown, for example, where Mahomes goes 1, 2, 3, swings it out to McKinnon, and it's just an easy touchdown, right? In a league that's making nothing easy on Mahomes, McKinnon's that running back that I think can help them pick up the dollar bills off the ground. So, it's just a good omen for the Chiefs, and it also, when you think about the mistakes that they've made, this is the reason why the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick just wasn't great, right? Like, that's what they wanted Clyde to be. And it ultimately ended up being an off-injured former Georgia Southern quarterback that ends up being the guy to add all that value to the team.
I give Andy Reid credit for mixing and matching the two and not overly. He usually likes to just have a guy be the guy and run him into the ground, and that hasn't been what he's done. He's used these two in tandem, although we have seen Isaiah Pacheco pop up on the injury report here. I thought a couple of times they used way too much against the Rams at the end. Why not throw Ronald Jones in there and hammer away in a game that was definitely cleared up? I do want to comment on this one. Uncle Todd cast that. Veach is only extended 15, 87, and 95. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Chris Jones past the age of 30. Chris Jones is not past 30. So he doesn't even fit into that category. They're going to have to make a decision. I think he'll be 30 next year. So I guess technically, if that's what he's getting at, then yeah, that would be accurate. But so still questions about that one moving forward. But there's no doubt McKinnon is playing at a very high level. I don't know. Were the Chiefs playing at a high level, Jeff, with all the flags that were flying? Or is Carl Cheifs the worst official or the worst officiating crew? I don't know. Maybe he's the best official ever, and he's got the youngest crew of refs working under him. I heard somebody speculate about that, like how much experience is he actually working with there, and he's just carrying a young crew across. It was not a fun game to watch. I've watched 2 of his games for the Chiefs, seen him in another one. They're all flag fests. The Chiefs, is it just Cheifs, or do they have bigger penalty problems than that, and Cheifs just hides what is a bigger problem?
I think they're one of the least penalized teams in the league, right, this year. I mean, which is a departure from previous years. They've had issues, but they've had a lot of issues with penalties. My thing with penalties has always been, and this is coming from somebody who sees a lot of teams, a lot of different markets. Everybody complains about the penalties wherever you go, and really, I always feel like that, one, they balance out. And 2, nobody ever really looks at it and says, okay, was that really a penalty, or I'm just pissed off that my team is put in a bad position? Like, of all the penalties, there were 10 penalty flags. Probably half in that game were pass interference, defensive holding, illegal contact type stuff. And you had Kelsey's, unsportsmanlike conduct, personal foul deal. Like, how many penalties would you really complain that weren't penalties in that game? Not a whole lot. And so officials are human. You're never going to have a game where every call is exactly right. You're probably going to get about an 80%. If you get 80% right, you're doing pretty well in most games. And so I get that Carl Cheifs, certain crews become public enemies of certain fan bases. But ultimately, I think the Chiefs didn't play that great. They won the game, which is a big deal, but I'll put it this way. Every player in this league is trying to get away with something. It's just a matter of who's calling that game that day, whether yellow flags fly or not. And so that's kind of where it's at. You can throw 30 penalty flags every game if you want, or you can have guys who are pretty liberal. If you watch the Giants Commanders game, the last play of that game, when the guy was climbing up the back of Curtis Samuel to knock a pass away. It looked like a WWE showcase event. And let it go. Let him play. Now, that's how that crew wanted to officiate it. But again, I think it's much ado about nothing. I think it's always decided by the teams on the field ultimately.
Eric, no chance you're going to get me defending the officials. I have not been a fan of the way they've called games in this league for quite some time. But is this, from a Cheifs standpoint, the underdog numbers are exorbitant. Like betting the underdog if Carl Cheifs refs the game is a big one. I've had people send me things like that's a sign that he's on the underdog. I don't buy that for a second, but I do think when you throw as many flags and throw flags that you then end up picking up, which a number of people have commented on here, it takes away the rhythm of the game, which I think for a high-powered offensive team is a detriment to them. And I think he does track good teams down. I don't think by design or intention, but they're not a good draw. If you see Cheifs' crew get into the playoffs, which I don't think they will, if you do, man, you got to be worried if you're the Chiefs. You draw that crew, don't you?
I think it's just a styles make fights thing. Like I haven't dug deeply into the data other than when I've looked at, some of my friends' betting analysis and stuff. like there are there are crews that call more pass interference penalties than other crews. To Jeff's point, like I felt like the Jalen Petra penalty on Smith-Schuster was probably the worst penalty of the game, and it went on Houston. But Sheffers, like, yeah, it's a styles make fights thing. I don't, the sample size is still pretty small. It's like, 50 games or something like that, which is, not obviously insignificant, but it's not enough, I think, to make a declarative statement. I know, the Chiefs are open -14 and they closed -14.5. So if there was if there was somebody on the take in that game, as everybody knows from the Donaghy situation and the plenty of issues out west before, like there would be systematic bets on the side of the Texans, and that simply isn't the case. So I personally believe that over time, referee errors are approximately averaged out. But I think that there are certain types of crews, and I think that there are certain types of teams, and sometimes those two things don't align the best for the teams that we're rooting for.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they'll help you as much as they hurt you, but I do think the flow of the game, the tempo of the game, the momentum of the game can be affected, and I do think that they drag good teams back to the pack. How about the turnovers, right? That was a big concern. Let's real quick hear Andy Reid talking about where they are with the turnovers and how big a concern that is.
We need to take care of that. Yeah, we need to take care of that for sure. That and the penalties we gotta clean up, and the guys are aware of that. We just gotta do it, and you work your fundamentals, your techniques, you practice those, take care of the penalty part of it, and then you go in and trust them in a game, and then you keep that ball high and tight when you're carrying it, if that's a problem. And then, Pat, we talked about the interception part. He worked hard on that last week, making sure, his eyes were right and so on, and did a great job of that. So, and that's where I say he was a great example for our team in both areas, the penalties and of how you take care of business. That becomes very important.
I don't want to say things can get unlucky ever, but I think in the last 6 games, you guys have had 10 fumbles and lost 7 of them. There's a bit of a 50-50 thing when you're trying to recover the ball on the ground. That's not, you practice like diving on the ball during practice, or that's not something you mess with at this time?
No, well, you practice on covering, so making sure all bodies are going to the ball, both sides of the ball, and you hustle to it. In case the ball does come out, you're in a position where you can get on it, and that we talk about, but you're not gonna, we're not jumping on balls right now.
That was my coworker Todd Lebo, Jeff, talking about the losing 7 of the last 10. It's something I've talked about for a long time. Ball goes on the ground, it should be 50-50. If you're fumbled it, 20 times, you've lost 17. Hey, the math says you should have a whole bunch start going your way. But on the year, they've fumbled 20 times, lost 10, right? So maybe they're in a bit of a bad stretch of late, but for the year, it's not a coincidence. I get what he's saying about Patrick Mahomes, but we already put the quarterback on another spot out by himself for the position. That guy even more so. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes can correct it. I'm with you, and I get what Sam McDowell was saying on my radio show, the columnist for the Kansas City Star, about that's not as predictable. That's not as predictable over the grand scheme of things. The world, did the helmet hit the ball and knock it loose? The Pacheco one certainly seems like bad luck, right? 2 hands on the ball, he gets the helmet right on the ball, it comes out. That can happen. But they just do it week after week after week. Like at some point, you are what your record says you are, right? Like, I know we always use that with wins and losses, but it's kind of true about how you play. If you never stop the run, I listened to Greg Robinson and Bob Sutton say, well, if we stop that 80-yard run and that 60-yard run, we only give up 110 yards. And that's right there with the best in the business. Yeah, but you gave up 270, right? Like, at some point you are what your record says you are. And their record in turnover says they're not good.
Yeah. And, and the big thing with turnovers is you can talk about them being random or you talk about them coming in bunches. Ultimately, defensive players begin to sniff them out. And so they play you differently. They begin to attack the football more. And I know Pacheco has had, 4 fumbles this year? Is that what it is now?
Yeah, I think we're
and so, people are coming after the football. They're going to instead of being, I think earlier in Mahomes' career, because people were so worried about big plays and that offense was just at a whole different level. I think defenses were more conservative. They were on their heels more. And when you get a defense attacking you more and coming after the football more, it's just a different shift in mentality. It creates a different dynamic in the game. And you saw it in that game with when Kelsey fumbled, the Bengals game, where they knew, all right, we're coming after the football. And he's not a fumbler. But defenses feel like they can make a big play happen. They can hold a guy up, catch him right, gang tackle, get their hands in there, punch, swipe, whatever it is, and they got to fix it. I mean, you can dismiss it by looking at all these different stats. Yeah, it's a phenomenal offense. Yeah, it's a phenomenal quarterback with a great tight end, but you get killed by turnovers in this game. It really is that simple. And I do think there is, and I know Andy behind the scenes is not as calm and cavalier about this stuff as he sounds in front of a microphone in a press conference where it's just like, we'll get it fixed. It's not who we are, blah, blah, blah. This is the kind of stuff that makes coaches' heads explode because you only get so many possessions. And when you're playing good teams again, I don't see the Bengals turning it over when they play the Chiefs. I don't see the Bills turning it over when they play the Chiefs. And why is that happening? Because they are taking better care of the football.
Yeah, taking better care of the ball, and also the Chiefs having a hard time taking it away. They fumbled 20 times, only forced 13. I think I heard the stat the Giants have forced something in the neighborhood of 26, like twice as many forced fumbles. Eric, the plus minus is twofold: taking care of it, but also taking it away. Where's your level of concern?
Yeah, I mean, the Bills had a turnover against the Chiefs on the first drive of the game at Arrowhead this year. The last 2 weeks, obviously in the Denver game, they got 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown. I know it's Denver. Last week, Frank Clark was deliberate about stripping the ball from Davis Mills in overtime. And I think that on the defensive side, I think that they're more prone to get turnovers than they were last year because they're more athletic, but they're still not a great defense. So on that side, I'm not optimistic. I think on the offensive side, I think that it's a stress point. I think that I do think that it'll come around, and I think Todd's question was a good one, which is look, if you recover 2 of those 10 fumbles, what is the difference in the last few games? Maybe big, maybe not. I don't know, but I do think you're going to get some regression, just like last season when I said on the show last week, Mahomes was, having a lot of interceptable balls caught last year, and then down the stretch, it didn't happen. I think that you are going to see some regression towards the mean. Now, I think the point Jeff is bringing up is if this offense always has it in them to give the ball away, and the league is such that they're going to make the Chiefs have to cross the street, a bunch of times on the way to the end zone. Again, the NFL is a fewer possession league now, right? There was that article at 538 basically saying, why are all these games close now? Well, it's because there are fewer possessions in the NFL now because all these teams are playing too high. So every turnover gets magnified. When we watched that really cool Rams-Chiefs game in 2018, Mahomes turned the ball over a bunch in that game, but they had 3 more possessions than they would have in an average game now because the pace is so much quicker and there's more big plays. So I think turnovers matter more now, and as such, the fact that the Chiefs are turning it over more now is being magnified in the results.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, I wouldn't mind going back to stopping the clock a little more often along the way to get more offense. If we didn't stop for 75 different reviews, 38 different conferences amongst the refs before they even make a call, to then go review it after that, all the waste of time. It's starting to become like baseball. We got to jack around with our batting gloves, scratch ourselves 4 times, spit, step in with 1 foot. It's like the non-game part of the game is infuriating here. Let's talk MVP. Jeff, is Mahomes back in the driver's seat? I heard this conversation my radio station driving home tonight, and it was yep, he's back in front of Jalen Hurts. Did we not see Josh Allen go at the Dolphins? It's like you got in front of Josh Allen, he's out. Okay, you fell behind Hurts. No, but Allen was eliminated. Like, no. I think Josh Allen's part of this conversation as well. I mean, I think it's pretty wide open. Hurts may be done if he misses some significant time. This may end up eliminating him. But the idea that Patrick Mahomes is a walk in the park here moving forward, I think it's forgetting about a really good quarterback in Buffalo.
Well, and a pretty good one in Cincinnati too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's 3 weeks ago Mahomes had a chokehold on it, and I thought the only way he's not going to win it is if he starts having some tough games, and he's lost a big game in Cincinnati where he didn't have huge numbers, and he had the Denver game right after that where he had 3 picks. And so, we mentioned this last week when we talked about this. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at it, and I know people want to throw out all these different stats. And this is a storyline award. It's a narrative award, and so whoever has the best story usually ends up winning it. And right now, yeah, Jalen Hurts, I think if he doesn't play this week, not that big a deal. If he misses 2 weeks, I think it's a big deal for him. But Mahomes still has to play at a really high level. And yeah, I do think Josh Allen and Joe Burrow have the opportunity to really play a role in this if they keep playing at high levels too, because they're going to be playing big games down the stretch and putting up big numbers as well. So I think I wouldn't take it from Hurts right now because we haven't seen, I don't think he's going to play this week. His coach is talking about the possibility. I don't see why you would do that with a shoulder separation, whatever it is, shoulder strain. But I think after this week, it'll be a different conversation if he's not played and Mahomes has a huge game and Allen and Burrow keep playing at a high level.
Eric, where do you sit on the MVP? Who's got it now? What does it take for Mahomes to win it?
I agree with like every constituent piece that Jeff said, and then I completely disagree with the conclusion. I think Allen and Burrow deserve consideration for sure, and I think that game Saturday between the Dolphins and the Bills, that was one of the best quarterback performances you're going to see. I think Burrow has been, amazing. Basically, similar stats to Mahomes if you take out the first 2 weeks of the year, which you can't, but he's been wonderful all year. Hurts threw 2 interceptions against a bad Bears defense the other day. I thought, and I know he had 3 rushing touchdowns. That's cool. But Mahomes had 2 stupid touchdowns against Denver that no other quarterback can do, and threw 3 interceptions, and that dings him significantly in the eyes of the markets and the people who are making the award. Hurts had, again, rushing touchdowns that I obviously, he's very suited for, but he made some really bad plays on Sunday. And if we're being fair to both Mahomes and Hurts, that should be as disqualifying, throwing 2 interceptions against one of the bottom 3 defenses in the NFL as Mahomes throwing 3 interceptions against the top 5 defense in the NFL. And so, if you look at any numbers that I care about, Mahomes is the MVP by a country mile. And I think now, with Hurts sitting out, some of that uncertainty went away. And now you look at the markets, they have Mahomes as minus 300 or so. I agree with that number. I just think when you come up for air, Mahomes is the most pristine quarterback record in the NFL this year. And it's a quarterback award, so he should get it.
Red, Gold, and Bold is brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, serving the entire Kansas City metro area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full service pavement and pavement maintenance contractor. Any business you got that, if you got any kind of problems with your parking lot, whether it's building brand new or a small problem, a large problem, they've been serving Kansas City since 1994 with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a full written warranty. That's right. Call 816-484-3338. Tell them Red, Gold, and Bold sent you. That's 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. The defense, Jeff, gives up just 219 yards, but does allow 24 points. The Texans' offense is not good. They're playing 2 quarterbacks. We know what that means. They don't have one. Nobody plays 2 quarterbacks if they have a quarterback. Play 2 when you don't have any. Yet they were still able to, when it counted, get points on the board. You mentioned what Sam McDowell, the columnist for the Star, said about the yards per play. Not good for the Texans. There are reasons to like what the Chiefs got done. But they still ended up going overtime with a 1-11-1 team. Where do you sit now with the latest returns on the Chiefs defense?
Same place. I give him credit for making the plays at the end. Frank Clark's play was a huge play. Willie Gay made a great recovery. I do think the numbers, 219 against the bad offense, that's a good thing. But it just felt like when there was too many times Davis Mills had a lot of time to throw, that yardage, if they were completing some of the passes that they were getting called for pass interference, legal contact for, might have been different. And I just don't think it's like, I think we talked about that Ricky Wall last week or guys getting tired. It does feel like there is a lethargic quality to some of their play right now, especially with some of the younger players. And when you're relying on so many young guys in key positions, that can be a factor. We talked about Nick Bolton, where he's at, the amount of usage he's had. He doesn't seem to be flashing in the same way that he was earlier this year. And again, it's just it's tough because I feel like they just don't have a lot of guys. Willie Gay actually has made a lot of plays for them over the last couple of weeks. Like, he's really stood out. But it's been hard to find too many guys outside of him who've been consistently showing up and doing big things. I mean, Chris Jones has been able to be neutralized. I've said it before, the safeties I don't think are that great. I think they're pretty mediocre. And so you're not getting much on the back end. And it's just there's too many completions. It's a bad combination. And it's not, I don't think it's a talent thing, because I think they have talent there. It's just that there's something with this defense, and maybe it's more up front. They just can't, their players up front can't be dominant, so everything else looks bad. But I felt that way for a long time, and it was just reconfirmed again. Yeah, it's just a mediocre defense.
Yeah, one of the guys that they're counting on, Eric, to really have big games is Chris Jones. I'm looking it up here. He was at 10 sacks, got there fairly quickly. He had a sack this past week against, he had one against Denver. That was last one. What are we said? He has been neutralized. Double teams seem to have been holding him off here of late, and if they're not getting, they get after the quarterback. They don't. That's the one thing is they get after the quarterback. They don't do it with just their front four. We know they have to bring the blitz to get there, but they do get there quite a bit. Yet it's not turning into turnovers, which is what usually sacks do. They are a bit of an enigma. Is there better days waiting to happen, or is it just no? This is it. It's flawed. It's going to be flawed. And Andy Reid damn well better lean into the offensive side of things. Every time there's an either or on fourth down, he needs to go for it.
Yes, to everything. Jones is in that same ilk for me right now. He's in the whole team is kind of in a lull right now. Jones knew early in the season that he had to be a superstar for this team because, and I think Sam said this on your show, like, we look at the wide receiver position as the rebuild position, but this is really a rebuild defense. And Jones, was up for the task of being a superstar on a defense that really needed one. And we just haven't seen that the last few weeks. And hopefully, much like the team writ large, I think, hopefully he can emerge back, in the next couple weeks in the playoffs and be that difference maker he was, say, in the Super Bowl, for example, a couple of years ago against the 49ers. I think that, that's certainly possible. I thought Jeff brought up a really good point, though. I think, the Texans got big yards on just like a handful of drives. The rest of the game, it was kind of 3-and-out stuff. The one thing that I found curious was they were playing Darius Harris for like entire possessions over Willie Gay. And those were the possessions where the Texans like really had their way. And I wonder if that's a product of Willie Gay not being healthy, not being necessarily fit, or they're just trying to, develop a guy like Darius Harris. Because I think that Willie Gay really does need to step up for this defense to take a next step. I think Nick Bolton is kind of who he's always going to be, better for better or worse, and for mostly better. But that, Gay is a guy that, and Snead, I think, are two guys that if this defense is going to emerge and be better than what we're used to, those two guys really need to be the guys.
Yeah, no doubt. They're going to have to come together a little bit better than they have to this point. And I still come back to, is this team just bored? Are they bored waiting for the postseason? We'll find out when we get to the postseason. Seahawks come in 7-7. Jeff, that's a dangerous team. Geno Smith has played Alex Smith-like football. He's had 4 interceptions, I think, in his last 5 games. So that's trended upwards. So maybe the book is starting to get written on Geno Smith. But overall, I think it's 27-8. That's very much 27 touchdowns is more than any season Alex Smith had, except for his last one in Kansas City, and he had exactly 27, I believe, in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he had 28 in that season. But Geno Smith's playing better. They want to pound the rock. Defensively, they can't stop the run. It's not like it's a textbook Pete Carroll team. It's kind of an anomaly, and they seem to be on the down slope of the season. How dangerous are the Seahawks?
Well, they're fighting for their lives. So, I mean, you saw it from the New York Giants on Sunday night. I mean, they're a team that hadn't won a game in a month, and they found a way to get a win against Washington. And so, yeah, I think any team that's, trying to hold on in the playoff race is going to be dangerous. And Geno Smith is better than Russell Wilson, and he's better than Davis Mills. So and DK Metcalf is better than anybody else the Chiefs have seen since Jamar Chase. So right off the bat, even with Tyler Lockett not playing in this game, you have an offense that can do some things. I think three big questions here. One, is Kenneth Walker going to be healthy? Because if he's healthy, that offense is totally different. He's a tremendous runner. He's been banged up with this ankle injury. I don't know how healthy he'll be. I'm sure he'll be out there because he played last week against the Niners. Didn't play a whole lot, but he is a factor. 2, can they find a third option in the passing game? I'm assuming Marquise Goodwin steps in for Lockett, but they've had to use their tight ends a lot to help in protection because they haven't been protecting that well. And so guys like Noah Fant, Will Dissly, they're going to have to be factors in this game for this offense to really be able to challenge the Chiefs. And then defensively, it's a weird dynamic here because you're talking about a bad run defense against a team that still doesn't run the ball as much as they would against defenses like this. And so if Andy wants to go out there and hand the ball off 30 times, I think I would say, Chiefs roll here, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to do that. And the Seahawks have been pretty opportunistic. They do get a lot of takeaways. And so that is a big factor. Are they going to turn the ball over? Can they handle Metcalf in that passing game? And is Kenneth Walker playing? If it's the wrong way for the Chiefs, I can see the Seahawks pulling an upset. I think that the Chiefs will win the game.
All right. Eric, how big a threat are the Seahawks?
I mean, I'm more concerned for Jeff's Lions because they have the tiebreaker with Detroit. But no, I think the not having Lockett is a real problem because, he's a different guy. Like in the slot, I think he's just a tough matchup for a guy like Snead. So not having him hurts, but they do have now, speed with Metcalf, speed with Goodwin. Offensively, they're really good at tackle. I think they're not as good on the interior, and so that should play to Chris Jones' strength. On the offensive side of the ball, I honestly think and maybe you can kick this down or whatever, but when I just watched the game back against Houston, I thought the Chiefs' offensive line in the running game was as good as it's been in a long time. And so maybe that's just because they're playing Houston, but Seattle's got kind of a Houston-like defense against the run. So I do agree with Jeff. I think if they commit to the running the football with Pacheco and Jones and maybe a little bit of McKinnon in there, I do think that they can control this football game. And the other part about it is they kind of have San Francisco elements to them at the corner position with Woolen and others. And the Chiefs' best game at wide receiver all year came against the Niners. I think that, with their speed, with Valdez-Scantling, for example, I think that they can victimize the corners for Seattle because it's a very 49ers scheme without the 49ers talent.
I will say this, Jerrick Woolen going to the 5th round was a guy that everybody went on and on about Pacheco. How's a guy with a 4.35, 40 end up in the 7th round? How did a 6'4" corner that runs sub 4.4 end up in the 5th round?
4.26.
Was it? I thought it was 5th.
No, 4.26.
4.26.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I thought you said in the 6th. Yeah, how does that guy end up where he ended up, Jeff? What's the story on that. If nothing else, shouldn't you have been thinking, we'll try him at corner, we'll play him at safety, and know we've got something? How's an athlete like that end up down that low?
Well, he was a receiver for most of his thing, like for the first half of his college career, and then he moved to corner, so he didn't have a lot of reps there. And 6'4" corners are not very attractive in the NFL. I mean, you really have to be a tremendous athlete to make it work and be in the right system because, again, it's great to have that length, but it's hard to keep up with guys who are very shifty.
Yeah,
you're that long.
You can't flip the hips. You can't,
Yeah.
you don't have the agility part of the other position. That's why 6'1" seems to be the ideal.
Yeah.
6'1" with long reach and everything seems to be it. But I would think, obviously, is Seattle just have a scheme that fits this kid? Because I bring it up just because Joshua Williams was, and I'm not going to say a reach. He's playing for the Chiefs and has a lot of physical attributes you like. He's a long corner like that. He went before, Woolen did.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I think teams are trying to find more corners who are of that ilk because length does matter. But again, I think you look at the Chiefs system, they teach their guys to be very physical and very handsy. And so that is, if you have a longer body, longer arms, that plays well to you if you're going to come up and press somebody. I think Seattle, they still play a lot of zone, and just as the Niners do. And so you're not asked to be locked up on a guy one-on-one, and you're able to play more your position and use your eyes and have help in different parts of the field. So you're not as stressed. And so I don't think that a guy like Tariq Woolen can play in every system. But, yeah, for them, he's tremendous because he's basically he's the next Richard Sherman, pretty much.
No doubt. All right. Who wins, Eric? Let's start with you. What's your prediction on the game?
Yeah, I think it's Chiefs. I think Geno Smith has played really well, and so he'll keep them in it. I think he's, good enough to kind of play a modest game. So I'm going to go, and I'm not going to bet the Chiefs against the spread, that's for sure. I'll go 27-20. So I think Seattle covers, but I think the Chiefs win, by 7 or so.
All right, Jeff.
I got Chiefs 27-21 with a late Harrison Butker field goal just to upset Dustin Colquit. just to push it through, to extend it, to give him
and Jeff,
seal
it'll
the
be on
game.
4th and 1, so it'll also piss me off.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Seattle lost 21-13 to the Niners. Chiefs don't have that kind of defense. Expect Seattle to get higher. I expect the Chiefs to move the ball effectively. They're going to run when they can run. That makes the passing that much easier. I expect a big day out of the offense. I'm going to go maybe 37-23.
Have you watched the last 2 weeks?
I have, and that's one of the reasons why I think everybody and their brother is going to be on the Seahawks. So I'm going to take the Chiefs. I do think that there is listen, I've called for the big win. It's blown up in my face. It's not helping my picks. It's not helping my bets. I am paying for it. I do think at some point the fury has to be unleashed. And I think there are things to like about this football team. And I think the fact that Seattle can't stop the run, the Chiefs can run it. I think if they wanted to go out and be a pounded team, to Eric's point, why wouldn't the Chiefs run up and down the field on Seattle? When they can run up and down the field, that makes the passing game easy. And I think that pulls Seattle out of their shell. If you want to tell me that this game is 16-13, somebody kicking, either one of the teams kicking a field goal at the end, I could probably find a scenario that says that, but I think this offense is too good. Temecula, you got to say, there you go, Soren. You're consistent, right or not?
That's
There
right.
you go. That's it. Exactly.
Petro,
Yeah.
a couple things, Petro. The integrity fees that you're paying on those bets in Kansas, they're feeding somebody. So you are donating back. So let's look at this from the generous guy you are, but also the number. I think that the one thing we have to realize as people who have been pushed back a little bit by the Chiefs' results, which have not been great of late, is the number one indicator of who wins and who wins the Super Bowl is, can you move the ball on offense? And despite the fact that these games have been underwhelming, the Chiefs have continued to move the ball on offense. And so, what red zone crap, all that stuff is pretty noisy relative to, can you move the ball on offense? And they can move the ball on offense.
Yeah. We'll find out. We'll find out if that ends up being the difference. Listen, if you're catching us on the podcast or right now on the stream, hit that like button, hit the love button, subscribe. It does a lot for us. Doesn't cost you nothing. We would appreciate it if you would. We want to thank our sponsor, GAN Asphalt and Concrete. You need anything with a parking lot, you got a business, or you work for a business, got parking lot problems, whether it's a repair or building a brand new parking lot, nobody in Kansas City will do a better job. Locally owned and operated, free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project, it comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Again, that's ganasphalt.com. We're back at it tomorrow with our NFL podcast, Too Deep, TOODEEP, Too Deep. We'll be doing that tomorrow at 9 o'clock Central Time. If you want to catch that, we'd love to have you. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Eric Eager on the road to family, still not missing the pod. Very impressive. Love the dedication. You can catch his work at consumersports.com, the premier NFL analytics, football analytics guy in the country. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, saying thank you very much. Happy holidays from all of us to all of you. I look forward to seeing you next time on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.